Roman is a first-generation Ukrainian-American who held a top-secret security clearance, became a self-taught digital marketer as a result of the 2008 recession, and later founded Nova Zora Digital in 2012. He is also the host of a Top 100 podcast on Apple Podcasts for How To, for his podcast titled Digital Savage Experience. In addition, the devastating loss of 5 miscarriages with his wife over the span of 3 years led him to become a foster parent in 2018. With death, loss, and hardships, Roman pushes through no matter what. So, welcome back, everyone. I'm so excited today to have Roman here with us today. Roman, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a first generation immigrant. I came to the US from Ukraine in 1990 when I was 5. Ukraine was still under the Soviet Union. It gained its independence in 1992. We had to go through Vienna, Austria, Rome, Italy. Went to school here, went to college here, thought I was going to go the criminal justice route. I ended up interning with the Secret Service, held a top secret clearance.
Yeah.
And then I graduated and the recession basically hit. So state, local, federal agencies stopped hiring, budget freeze basically. And then I was looking for a job for months and months and, no one was hiring. So I got down, I was depressed. Only thing that really kept me sane and going was kind of clearing my head at the gym. And I met someone at the gym that proceeded to tell me to come out to his car to give me something to help me out. So I went out to his car, he opened his trunk and gave me a packet about search engine optimization. And he said to read up online, and then I can do that for his business. And that was 12 years ago. So from then I've held 3 director roles. I worked with Fortune 500 clients, managed 7-figure marketing portfolio, started my agency in 2012. I have obviously a podcast as well, interviewing different, professionals, people from all walks of life, personal side. I am a foster parent, so we just obviously got our 21st foster child straight from the hospital.
Wow.
And to get into that, obviously, my wife and I went through an infertility journey as well, where in the last 3 years, we've had 5 miscarriages and have had to pay probably, I would say, in excess of $100,000 out of pocket for all the infertility treatments. And we're still here.
Oh my gosh, that is crazy. That is crazy. So let's tap into that a little bit more. So what advice would you have, Roman, for anyone who's currently going through similar infertility concerns and issues like you and your wife had?
Yeah, I would probably maybe even find like a support group or people around you. I mean, you would be surprised how many people go through similar things. My wife also has PCOS. I mean, a lot of women struggle with that. So then obviously it's either harder to get pregnant or almost impossible based on the severity of that.
Right.
And I think obviously your partner or your wife and husband just kind of you're going through it together. And especially like the things that we've went through in terms of miscarriages, because it's hard every time you go through it. So I think just kind of being there for each other, not blaming each other, and kind of, taking it one day at a time.
Right, right. That's great advice. I think finding a community and finding that network of people who can share similar experiences really makes it just a little bit more normal for you, so you don't feel so high anxiety. You have people who in your circle who are able to speak to similar experiences, and then you don't feel so alone anymore. You have each other as a couple, but being able to just know that there are other couples having the same struggles and the same infertility concerns, it's very comforting to know that you're never alone on that road. So that's great advice. Thank you. What about, so your journey to fostering, what finally led you to say, okay, you know what, maybe right now, this is what we want to do? What really led you down that road? A lot of people don't think about that. So would you mind sharing that?
Yeah. So after, going through 5 miscarriages, and we're actually trying to do another cycle. So another basically IVF cycle in terms of a embryo transfer. But after going through 5 miscarriages, we thought this may be a route for us to, create our family or start a family as well. and held
Right.
kids at the same time. So technically, we're designated as foster to adopt,
Okay.
and we got licensed June 1st of 2018. Since then, now we've had 21 kids in our home. The most we've had is 5 kids.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things
Wow.
where you don't necessarily think you can do something until you do it. If you
Right.
asked me 3 or 4 years ago, I'd probably say, yeah, that's probably not what's something I would do. I'm busy. I have all these things going on, all these focuses that are taking my time. But surprisingly, when you do something and you really want to do it and it's
Mm-hmm.
impactful and you give back, you can really find time for it, and you can really see how you can still get the things done that you're focused on, maybe from a professional kind of goal setting standpoint, but also kind of give back and add value from the
Right.
personal side as well.
Wow, that's amazing. So five at a time, you go from not parenting and to maybe parenting one or two, and then five. So what were the feelings and emotions prior to going into that? Did it just kind of trickle in? Was it five siblings at a time, or?
I mean, we've had kids up to a year in our home, all the way
Ah,
to as short as a weekend. So it depends
wow.
on for how many kids your house is licensed. So you get
Yeah.
a foster license where you're licensed as foster parents, and then you have your home license depending on where you
Mm-hmm.
live. That basically impacts how many children you can take. So
Mm-hmm.
technically, let's say you live in a 10,000 square foot house with 10 bedrooms. Technically, you can be licensed for maybe 15 kids. I mean,
Right.
will you have 15 kids at
Mhm.
once if you're, crazy and brave enough? Maybe, but we could have been licensed up to 7 based on our home, but we
Yeah.
said 5, and then we may get an exception. Our first placement were two brothers, siblings. We thought we are gonna do or get one child, and then
Uh-huh.
we had a call based on us getting 2 children, and the person said basically we're kind of last on the list. If we didn't say no, the children would be split up, and then we talked to each other like, can we really do that? And they
Oh,
only have each other, and we said, let's
yeah.
just give it a try. And
Oh,
I don't know, I think when you get to a certain point, I think with like everything, it becomes just like second nature. So after like
yeah.
3 kids, it's just we have a process and kind of like a well-oiled machine, my wife and I. But I mean, she does
Right.
a lot with them in terms of everything, and I think it runs fairly smoothly and it's manageable even with 5 kids.
Wow, wow. So I formerly was a pediatric nurse, still am, but I don't work at the bedside anymore. But and a lot of the things that I experienced was having kids who were requiring medical foster care. Some of them not even just medical, but some of them just waiting for a placement in foster care, waiting at the hospital and just staying there, and that becomes their temporary home until a placement's finally made. At what time in the night do you get these phone calls? Do you get them all hours of the night? Is it very structured and very, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5? I know that's not the case, but why don't you tell us about your experience?
Yeah, it's basically all of those. It depends on the removal. Sometimes the removal isn't deemed an emergency, and you have to go to court and get a court order to remove the child. And sometimes, let's say, you hear your neighbors arguing, and then you hear like hitting and whatnot, and you hear the children crying, and
Hmm.
you call in an anonymous call to there's an abuse hotline, and then the
Yeah.
police show up, and then if they deem like the children are being abused or they look malnourished or neglected, they would call the child services team in, and then they would remove the child on the spot. And at that point, they start looking for a placement, maybe not even a permanent placement. Sometimes they'll call in the middle of the night, hey, can you have this child in your home, even if it's just till the morning until we figure out something more permanent. So it's
Hmm.
just different situations and different situations. I mean, we've had a
Yeah.
1.5 year old in the middle of the night where he came, he had, um, black eyes, a bloody nose. My wife
Oh,
took him to the hospital the next day, and the nurses basically said they saw him in the same hospital about 6 months ago with a fractured skull. So he was 1 year old with the fractured
oh,
skull. He
oh,
was definitely afraid of adults, nonverbal, things like his mom prostituted out of the apartment. So for him to be quiet, she would beat him so he wouldn't talk and, like stay in the closet or whatever. So there's just like crazy stories like that. That's just kind of one of them. But each
yeah.
story has, its own kind of nuances and
Right.
different things in terms of what those kids have experienced, which is a lot of the times very traumatic, more so than some of the adults I know in terms of
Exactly.
what they went through at such a young age.
Yeah, yeah. So how does that change your perspective? how has that changed the way you see people and children and just the less fortunate and more vulnerable?
Yeah, one, I try to say that myself. I like to be an advocate for those kids and for change in the system. So a
Yeah.
lot of interviews I do is specifically about how can people change the system, or
Yes.
the perception of foster care, because foster care and the foster care system has a lot of holes in it, at least in the U.S. And I think COVID and the whole pandemic exposed even more,
Mm-hmm.
things that
Mm-hmm.
were an issue during, the everyday life before, the March lockdowns.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's tough in that sense because you advocate for the children. A lot of the things are bureaucratic and don't even make sense in terms of getting the kids care, the right therapy, and stuff like that. So it's kind of an ongoing battle that we're willing to go through. And if we have to offend adults, we do, or if we have to be direct and kind of kick down doors and go above people to get the kids help that they need and really advocate on their behalf.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Um, I remember when I worked at the a children's hospital in a large inner city area farther up north from here, it was that oftentimes it was a reoccurring theme. Why are we adopting outside of this country when there are plenty of children within our country that needs help? And if you're not considering adoption yet, then at least consider fostering, and that we needed more people to open up their homes and doors to these children who are less fortunate. And it really changed my perspective on how the fostering system, like, I understood a little bit, but it wasn't until I became a pediatric nurse and I had an infant with healing fractured rib rib fractures, and they were healing at this point, and this is an infant. So if for it to be healing would have been weeks to months of processing for his body to heal, and he's just laying there. And anytime I went towards him with a stethoscope, he would cry because going towards his abdomen area was his pain center from the types of pain that he went through, and of course not being able to speak for himself. So it totally changed my perspective on things. I have not yet taken that leap to do what you've done and your wife has done, so that is very incredible and courageous of you guys. So I really do thank you. But then my son, he had a friend in middle school. Was it middle school? It was middle school when we were living outside of Fort Bragg. And dad was military. We were military. But for whatever reason, when mom ended up not showing up anymore in Texas, the son was sent over to Fort Bragg to stay with his dad, and his dad wanted nothing to do with him and his new wife. So the child was then into the foster system in a state that he's not familiar with. He has family in Texas, but he belongs to dad biologically, so he was sent to dad. And this poor kid lived with one family for a little bit, was a phenomenal family, but again, another military family fostering him, and were expected to now relocate to somewhere else. And so because of that, they had to relinquish the fostering, and he went back into the system and just bounced from home to home to home, but stayed in contact with my son the entire time. And, from time to time, we would touch base with him only to hear his foster mom wouldn't take him to go trade in a video game so that he can have $20 from the sale, and told him that, well, she's going to charge him for gas money. Just really, even foster parents who are not great foster parents, bad ones, who are in it for the stipend that they get from month to month and not necessarily in it for the kids. And that was just really disheartening. So have you even also experienced a little bit of that as well?
Kids, I guess, coming from different homes and stuff like that. Like, if you really think about it, the stipend is for like basic needs. So,
Mm-hmm.
as foster parents don't get compensated or directly paid, but that stipend can go to whatever. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And like you
Yeah.
said, somebody can have maybe 5, 6, 7 foster kids, and then
Mhm.
give them the bare minimum, no kind of events, no activities, no really nothing, and
Mhm.
pocket that. I mean, personally, I can really make that stipend in like a day or two. So it's not one of
Right.
those things. But I mean, we've done things like taking kids to Disney World, or flew them out west to visit family, and drove all the way to like
Wow.
Kentucky and see like the life-size Noah's Ark, and just random like the
Oh,
the miniature locomotive museum in the middle of like Pennsylvania. Just things that kids are interested in. Hershey Park, season passes to aquariums, and
yeah.
like Six Flags. So all of that obviously adds up and should be taken from that stipend. But like, if people just shove the kid in the room and said, just sit there,
Mhm.
watch TV, and eat the bare minimum, then
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I guess they could pocket that stipend. Nothing's really stopping them. But like you
Oh,
said, there are good foster homes and there are bad.
yeah.
Unfortunately, the public really sees a lot of stereotypes through film and TV in terms of
Hmm.
some of the bad situations and don't necessarily see or is highlighted in terms of like the good
Yeah.
foster parents and what they do and how they treat the children, because we treat each child like they're our own child. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a gift and a curse because it's heartbreaking when each child leaves, regardless if they stay a day or a year, because
Uh-huh.
you care about them, you love them, and more so you're worried about their safety and where they are and if they're safe. But
Yep.
like you said, there are people that kind of disconnect. Hey, this is it, you're staying in my home, it's just a home, and you're done and you move on. And it's
Hmm.
sad and unfortunate, but there are good homes, like you said, and there are bad.
Wow. Wow. So if somebody would like to get involved, what starting points would you give them? How would they start? Where would they begin? What resources should they really like read up on before they really consider it and sign the dotted line?
Yeah, so each state is different in terms of kind of
Right.
the system itself and how it's structured, because it's governed on the state level. Obviously, there are kind of protocols set on a federal level, but more checks and balances. But each state kind of governs themselves.
Yeah.
So I would basically reach out. So whatever county you're in, it either has one or two or maybe even more field offices in terms of in relation to where you live, based on the size and the population. Where I am in New Jersey, in my county, there are two, like north and south office. And
Mm-hmm.
basically, you will call that off and say you have interest, and then they call you in for their next kind of orientation. Obviously, with like COVID and stuff like that, they're done remotely. But
Yeah.
if conditions are what they should be in terms of no kind of health negative aspects or pandemics, then you would go in and they would kind of explain what it is to be a foster parent, things to expect. They may
Mm-hmm.
be like a foster parent or someone or a child that's been in the system that comes in and kind of speaks. And then if
Mm-hmm.
you're still interested after, you leave your information and you start the process, which for us took a year to get licensed based on things that come into play. My wife lived out of state, so they had to like look at criminal checks outside of the state,
Yeah. Which
working things, because they have to see
yeah.
like you're doing it, you have the right motives in terms of doing it. So
Mm-hmm.
in terms of your finances, can you support yourself and these children if something would happen minus their kind of stipend, what the
Mm-hmm.
reasons are and why you're fostering. Technically, my wife and I are designated as foster to adopt. So if we
Mm-hmm.
have a child and there's termination of parental rights, we would
Yeah.
be the first ones that the Division of Child Services would come to and see if it would make sense for us to, adopt the child or children.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Um, so you touched on it a little bit about the children and where they're coming from. So let's and you touched on the fostering and the bad side of what the media shows and what Hollywood shows. So let's touch on maybe possibly debunking, because I think a lot of people have reservations about saying, well, I don't want a 13-year-old or a 17-year-old in my house who's going to be rebellious and ungrateful and I can't trust them in my home alone. I still have to work. All those things that Hollywood kind of highlights about a child. I feel like they come from battered homes, and so my perception is that they're coming from a much more humbling place than we believe them to be. So, can you maybe debunk some of that?
Yeah, and it's also dependent. You're not forced to take any child or a child of a certain age. You can specify that you just want infants or you just want toddlers. Really, we've had kids no older than 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Almost all the children we've had or have are really preschool age. That makes sense in terms of them being in preschool, in terms of the activities we can do with them, in terms
Uh-huh.
of our schedules.
Yeah.
But like you said, some people may want to take teens, some people may not. Sometimes teens are harder, but I mean, it's not every teen. It's dependent on the
Mm-hmm.
situation the teens are coming from. My content on TikTok specifically is foster care content. I've had people reach out, kids that have been in over 50 homes while they
Oh,
were in the foster care system, and then they aged out if
wow.
they don't find a permanent home. So
Yeah.
if a child is in the system and there's termination of parental rights and nobody adopts the child, they just float from foster home to foster home or in one foster home until they age out. once they
Yeah.
age out, the chances of ending up on drugs, human trafficked,
Mhm.
sexually abused in gangs, things of that nature, go up by like 50 or 60%. So
Yeah.
it's really a sad statistic.
Right. And I don't know too much about it, and this is very old information that I do have, but when they turn 18, is there some sort of government assistance for them to now have their own apartment and have assistance from there? I remember hearing that there's something, but I'm not too 100%, and I'm not sure if you're familiar either.
There are, but a lot of the time the kids aren't necessarily made aware of, those different financial and different other situations in terms of housing, in
Mhm.
terms of therapy, in terms of training. Foster kids do get, help with tuition and stuff like that, but a lot of them aren't made aware of it. So then
Mhm.
obviously if they feel like they have no help and nobody shows them that they do, they just kind of, disappear and fade away after they age out.
Yeah. Wow. Oh. All right. Well, I appreciate so much, Roman, what you and your wife are doing for your community and for the children. That's so incredibly important and close to my heart. And I hope that one day I too will have the courage to move forward and do something in this area as well. So, which is why I was very curious when you had reached out to say that. I thought, that is so fascinating, and I don't think we hear enough of it. So. I definitely will check out your TikTok. I didn't even think to go there to check out your stuff, but I would love to see what you've got out there and just continue doing what you're doing. You and your wife, incredible, courageous people who are just doing this because you have the heart to do that. So that's amazing. Thank you. So let's go to something a little bit lighter. So digital marketing kind of started with the trunk of a guy's out of a guy's trunk, I guess is how we would say it. So um, let's go a little bit down that road with some of the roadblocks you've had, some of the wins that you've had in that area.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm basically self-taught, which in my
Mhm,
opinion gives me advantage because I've been kind of in the trenches because I think a lot of people are either generalists or practitioners. So you can read up on a subject and talk to talking points and seem like you know about it, or you can really
mhm.
be, in the trenches, go through the process and really, lived it. So
Yeah.
I started with search engine optimization at that one company. Then I got hired by another company called LexisNexis, where I worked on a portfolio of accounts where I can really test. So you need websites and you need real world experiences in terms of digital efforts to test different industries, different tactics, different
Mhm,
strategies. Because if you just read in it about it in a book, it won't necessarily apply to a real world scenario that you may have in terms of a client or a campaign. So
mhm,
really being in the trenches really has helped me in terms of at this point I've worked on about 600-700 campaigns in terms of clients, Fortune 500s. I think one hard part was kind of starting my own thing in 2012, really dealing with the business side, dealing with people being screwed over at times, not necessarily knowing that my trust or kind of good nature being taken advantage of, not being paid,
mm,
stuff like that, toxic
yeah,
clients. And I think everybody really goes through those growing pains in terms of starting a company, a startup, some kind of endeavor. Everyone
mhm,
will really deal with it. And I mean, I don't necessarily regret going through it.
mhm,
Maybe if I had a mentor or something else that would get me past it, but I learned a lot from those situations. And I think they added to my emotional IQ and really have built who I am now and how
yeah,
I deal with other professionals and people within my industry.
yeah, yeah, that's great. One of my previous guests had said, it's you learn, you relearn, then you unlearn, and it's just a cyclical cycle. You just continue to evolve within what it is that you're doing. So that's fantastic that, even though you've had some really troubling situations and toxic relationships with clients, it helps for you to grow as a person and become stronger and know how not to do that again or how not to find yourself in that type of situation again. And I think that goes for anybody who's an entrepreneur in general, down any field. I think we all get taken advantage of. One of my favorite podcaster, Tony Watley, just recently, I follow him on his Facebook group, and he had mentioned getting his podcast and his brand trademarked, and telling the story behind the trademark and how it happened and how it transpired, that one day when he finally decided that he was worthy, in his words, enough to be trademarked, he had decided to go and start the paperwork, only to find out somebody had already taken his 365 driven logo and idea and phrasing and started trademarking. Come to find out, it's actually a friend of his. And then within his friend circle, they all thought it was funny that they should do something like that just to kind of screw him over. And then, he was just like, he confronted the person, told them to hand over or we're getting lawyers involved. And then, they were able to squash it and move forward, but never again did he look back towards that friend. What kind of friend would do that to you? So, not just clients, but friends in general. Sometimes people just don't like to see you succeed and doesn't like to see you in the light. And they want to do everything they can to just kind of beat you down a little bit more to back down to their level. So it's very unfortunate. But thank you for that. So what are some of the best resources that you can share for individuals who would like to take their digital marketing to the next level?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff now. It's a little different in terms of internet and the ease of
Yeah.
information than it was in 2008. But I mean, if you look for different resources, I would recommend Moz, Search Engine Watch, different other publications where you can get kind of a crash course and kind of one-on-one or 101 class, like the beginner version, and really
Mm-hmm.
get the framework. Because there's a lot of things as a business owner, if you do have a website or if you want to undertake some kind of aspect of a digital strategy, at least a foundation, you can do
Yeah.
a lot of stuff in-house. Just learn kind of the basics and maybe hire someone internally or an agency if you need more advanced tactics or really take your
Mm-hmm.
digital marketing initiatives to the next level.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I think a lot of people, when they start with their entrepreneurship, they just want to do what they can to save the funds that they can, what little funds they have when they're starting out with just a few $100 in their pocket. And so finding those free resources that they can start at first and then kind of growing and learning from there and understanding really what direction you want to go in. So what advice do you have for people who are brand new to this and say, okay, well, Roman, I would like to seek your expertise. Where do they go from here?
I mean, it depends what they're looking to do. Like I use the example, they may have a Lamborghini goals with a Honda budget. So obviously, if you're a small business or you're getting into it, you're bootstrapping. I don't mind. I mean, I do a lot of pro bono stuff and just get on a call or a conference call for a half hour and tell you what you really need to do, or kind of push you away from maybe somebody that's more of a snake oil salesman and pushing things that wouldn't add value or maybe more toxic for your brand. But
Yeah.
usually, in terms of kind of my agency, we work with companies that have done something in terms of the digital space, have worked either with other agencies or have done something in-house, but really want to take their digital marketing efforts
Mhm,
to the next level, really
mhm,
enhance them and really kind of reach new levels in terms
mhm.
of what they've done previously and kind of scale their business digitally.
Right, right. So my ignorance and maybe lots of other ignorance out there, but digital marketing, can you tell us what all that encompasses?
Yeah, that encompasses any way you market to someone online. So that encompasses, let's say, search engine optimization, which is optimizing your website, paid
Right.
search in terms of if you see ads, if you're searching for something on a search engine, you have organic listings, which your website is optimized, and then you have ads within the search results. You have organic social media strategy, the content, the different things in terms of you're naturally targeting your audience. Then you have paid social in terms of ads and different things presented from
Mhm,
a paid perspective. You have other things in terms of this is, I would consider this a digital marketing effort
yeah.
if if it's part of your strategy in terms of
Mhm,
your brand lift and kind of visibility. So I
mhm,
think it's those things as well as anything that can add visibility to your brand,
mhm.
personal or professional, online as well. So
Right.
anything you can do really to market or target or reach your target audience, any of those means in terms of the internet.
Okay. Awesome. So, and one of my favorite people to listen to and watch and get motivated by is Gary Vee. And Gary Vee loves to say, get yourself out there on as many platforms as you can. And and really just put yourself out there. He said maybe you have a niche in the podcasting area, but filming yourself and recording it and putting on YouTube, like I am attempting to now with this terrible IT issues that I'm having right now, would market to a completely different group of audience that you never would have thought to be able to reach. But now you're getting out to them in the YouTube world, and very recently. He's been like pushing for TikTok. Get out there, get on TikTok,
He
do that.
actually just won the bid, his agency, to be the agency of record to market in North America for TikTok. I saw the
Wow.
announcement actually today. Yeah, I met him like 2 years ago at his most recent book when it launched at Wine Library, his dad's
Yeah.
store. So I
Hmm.
briefly talked to him. He signed the book and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I would say, other than the scale at which he is now, we're
Uh-huh.
coming from similar backgrounds. He's from Eastern Europe, came here,
Yep.
while it was still the Soviet Union, several years before I did, but
Uh-huh.
still kind of that immigrant journey and that kind of grit into pursuing
Exactly.
what you hope to do.
Exactly. So, now that you touch on it, and I didn't even have it as one of my questions, but Roman, how do you feel like being a first generation Ukrainian American really sets you different from a lot of just American born individuals, whether they're first gen, second gen, or whatever? How do you feel that that's differentiated and separated you from the pack?
Yeah, I think I'm hungrier and I have a different kind of a chip on my shoulder, or more like a grit. There's a lot of companies, unicorn companies, that people first generation immigrants or children of first generation immigrants have founded a lot of billion-dollar companies from Eastern Europe, and just immigrants in general. A lot of immigrants that come from situations where they're war torn, or hunger and famine or disease or oppressive governments. They come here, and
Yeah.
they've been through all that, so this is just kind of like a cakewalk in a way. Like, you still have your struggles, but it's an open economy, where if you have the will and
Mhm.
you develop the skill set, you can really do what you want to
Yeah.
do, really
Yeah.
build your own brand online. I mean, all you really need is the internet connection, and with the changings and happenings in the world, online's really
Mhm.
important. And I think it's just one of those things that adds grit, like I said, and
Yeah.
persevere through things that people that may have not experienced it, may have a harder time dealing with.
Exactly, 100%. I'm first generation Vietnamese American, and so it's also something that I feel like is very different between me and others. And my birth year is 1982, and as a 1982, depending on which website you're going to, I can be classified as a millennial, I can be classified as a Gen X, or what they like to call a Zennial. And to me, I do not fit any of the classifications for what they consider a millennial. And in talking to different people, and here in Miami we have a lot of first generation Cuban Americans, and so in speaking with them, I came to realize that I think it's just the first generation takes us and makes us completely different from that millennial concept of being entitled and just kind of like letting things come to you, and not working as hard. I'm not saying that that's all millennials, I'm not generalizing, but that's what the internet likes to tell us. And so I feel like there is that difference in hunger. And one of my other guests that I've had on, her name is Lena Lang, and she's actually a Ukrainian Canadian, and so she speaks about, as immigrants, we are always looking for greener pasture, and that couldn't be more true. It's something that my parents have always sought out, coming from Vietnam and being refugees and coming from a war torn country. My father was a soldier, allies with the American and the South Vietnamese army, and so just kind of all these different backgrounds that my parents came from, and the stories they have to tell and share, and continually beat us down with these reminders that if we didn't make it here to the US, this is where you would be now. So be grateful for where you are, and then continue to push forward and do better than what we could have ever imagined. And so 100% being first generation is makes us very different. Not saying that second, third, fourth, fifth generation is any different, because my husband's family has been here since the 1600s, before America was like the USA. And so, but it's just, I think the culture, culturally, he came from the Southwest, very family oriented, very, also very driven and everything too. So it changes and it differs between where you're living society wise. But then I do think that that first generation thing gives us that little extra oomph. So thank you. So thank you so much for that, Roman. I do appreciate all the insight that you have on digital marketing. So let's discuss a little bit about your podcast and how your journey started there, where you are now.
Yeah, so I think I always really wanted to get into podcasting, and if I really listen to myself, or like sometimes you have that kind of like dream or desire to do something, you would do it a little sooner. Some people never really run with it, or turn it into something and materialize it into something. But I kind of did it 5 years later than I wanted
Yeah.
to. So I think it was the last day of November in 2017. I really started recording on my phone. I had no equipment, no anything, And it's just one of those things, people want to just jump into it. You don't really need much.
Yeah.
Just see if you're passionate about it, what you get out of it, because people, I see a lot of people jumping into it for the wrong reasons. I want to monetize, monetize, monetize. Well, I mean, a lot of podcasts don't monetize, and a lot of
Right.
podcasts don't really make it, I think, past like episode 10. People just stop, see how
Yeah.
much work it actually takes. So if you don't outsource it or have a team to do it, there's a
Uh-huh.
lot to really deliver a good product, good
Yeah.
content, and really good sounding content and quality
Right.
content as well, and then market it, promote it, push it on
Yeah.
social, things like that. So there's a lot involved. So I mean, if you release an hour interview, that may be additional 5 6 hours of work on the back end, and people don't really see it.
Yeah.
So I first started it, and it was just me, a solo show about giving really actionable advice in terms of digital marketing, really, concrete tactics. Me meeting certain people. So one year I had a big push about meeting as many influential people and really, getting to them without
Mm-hmm.
really paying. So I kind of hacked systems and went to different industry launches, and not politely snuck in, I guess. Just got my
Yeah.
like lists for like company openings and stuff, meeting like
Uh-huh.
a co-founder of PayPal, like I said, Gary Vaynerchuk,
Yeah.
Gerard Adams, Lewis Howes, just people like
Wow.
that. And it was all free. So, I mean, if you complain, I'm never going to meet, like, there's always a way to really accomplish what you want to accomplish and meet. I'm not saying you're going to have this brainstorming or mastermind session for an hour with that person, but you
Mm-hmm.
may get a minute of their time to really bounce an idea or really make an impression. And then you
Yeah.
really don't know where that will go. So I did
Exactly.
that for about a year and a half, and my grandfather passed away February of 2019. And I
Oh.
switched over to an interview format March of 2019. I think it was
Uh-huh.
actually switching over as a coping mechanism and really helped in the grieving process, because I
Oh.
talked to people from all walks of life, startup founders, CEOs, former professional athletes, like I said,
Uh-huh.
criminal cartel, drug lords, and stuff like
Right.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one, I would never probably talk to them other than the show, because I talk
Yeah.
to people from all over the world. And two, we talk about motivations and hurdles and things that
Uh-huh.
they struggle with. And a lot of them have experienced loss. So during that time, it really resonated with me and really connected. And the podcast itself really
Yeah.
acted as a coping and grieving mechanism. And I think really helped me through
Yeah.
that, major loss of, he was my major kind of main role model growing
Yeah.
up, and really the main kind of father figure and male figure in my life. So it
Yeah.
turned that into me, and I think I became passionate about it. And I
Uh-huh.
think since March of 2019, I think I've interviewed at this point about 210 people, which is
Oh.
crazy. I have 70 episodes in queue ready to go live, and
Yeah.
it's kind of spiraled from there. So it's just one of those things where you keep doing it, you keep putting on good content.
Mm-hmm.
I put a 30-second video from one of my recent episodes. It got like 8,000 views
Wow.
on TikTok, because I mean, I'm a proponent of really driving traffic and converting
Yeah.
the traffic into listeners for my show. Uh,
Uh-huh.
I've gotten a post on TikTok that's reached, I believe, 103,000 views, which
Mm-hmm.
isn't really that uncommon, but you have to really know what you're doing. I mean, a lot of people
Right.
high numbers because that organic reach is still out there. It's not
Uh,
like Facebook or other platforms. So I really use that to drive kind of listenership. And at this
yeah.
point, the show is at like 160,000 plays and downloads,
Uh-huh.
60
Nice.
countries listened to, and it's kind of chugging along. I mean, I've had some conversations with podcast networks, so it's one of those things. Do I want to stay independent versus do I want to be part of a network? Pros and
Mm-hmm.
cons. And
Yeah.
it's been a really interesting journey and fun, and really met people both on the guest end and the interviewer end. And it's
Yeah.
really helped me as a person too, because I try to take something out of each interview I do or
Right.
each interview I'm on, and it's really helped me kind of grow in different directions as well.
Wow, wow, that was such like a huge knowledge bomb. I'm still sitting here listening to what like the tips you gave like 5 sentences back. But that's incredible. I mean, that's the journey that you took with your podcast journey, starting where you did, and then with the passing of your grandfather and the grieving journey, and then just finding a way to cope. That's beautiful. Being able to really authentically see where you needed to naturally go with that, and then just going, and then from that success, even more success came towards you with the just having all these incredible stories to share, because everybody, you're right, can cope and can associate with the loss of a family member and a loved one. And so that is incredibly amazing. I just think, a lot of times when I started my podcasting journey was not because, but it happened to be during the quarantine when I had a little bit more downtime. I wasn't driving in traffic back and forth when I was working from home for a short period. It gave me more time to really think and reflect what I wanted to do. One of the things I've always enjoyed was listening to podcasts. Well, I used to watch YouTube videos, but like listen to YouTube videos in my car, not necessarily watching as I'm driving. And then my husband and kids think that's absolutely insane. And so finally I like merged over and transitioned over to podcasts and was able to do it that way, and found so many fascinating podcast stories and some not so great. And I thought, I think I could do a little bit better than some of these people out there. And they're boasting that they're top this, top that. And I'm just like, well, their content's
Yeah, I mean, it's a vanity metric. It's a nice selling point, but it's one
yeah,
of those things. Okay, I reached number 48 for how to in the US, and then, 7 in Canada, 11 in the UK. Okay, like, and what is that accompanied with? It's
exactly.
like
Yeah.
saying anything. Well, like, okay, there's that one statement, but what has it resulted in? So it's
Exactly.
it's not a stationary point. So it's not like I reached 48 and stay there. It's fluctuated in and out of the top 100 to 200, back
Yeah.
to 50. So
Yeah.
it's just one of those things where I can put on a media kit and really help to pitch the guest that I want to get. I mean, at this point, I'm not necessarily chasing guests. I have a lot of booking agencies and PRs and
Uh-huh.
different publicists reaching out to me directly by either listening and really liking the content and the style
Yeah.
that I do my interviews in,
Sure.
and then just seeing, me promoting it, because that helps me too. Being the digital marketing mindset, it really helps me promote the show, because in terms of social,
Yeah.
organic, different methods as well, I can really promote it because I know what I'm doing in that kind of space.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
helped in that. And I think having those numbers is nice. I'm top whatever, top that.
Yeah.
But, how many downloads, how many plays, what other benefits that you get out of that are, more kind of consistent? Because like I said, for me, every interview I do, I try to take one thing out of the interview and apply it,
Yes.
regardless of who the guest is or regardless of what show I'm on, and really connect
Yeah.
and really just trying to be beneficial or an asset to that person that is on my show or I'm on theirs. Any way that I can help or collaborate. A lot of additional shows that I've been on are just
Mm-hmm.
collaborations with other podcasters and guests. You may be a good fit for that. A lot of the times I'll share a list of all my people I've interviewed on my show, and if
Uh-huh.
it makes sense to connect them, it's kind of just those little things, or just
Yeah.
share the list. Because like you said, you took advantage of the whole quarantine thing. I
Mm-hmm.
pushed it even further. I think I recorded like 60 or 70 interviews during this whole COVID time. And
Yeah.
then I made a push to be on other shows and other media outlets, which I think I've done about 40 or 50 interviews on other shows and publications,
Yeah.
and
Wow.
really utilize the time. And
Yeah.
like I talked about TikTok, you never know until you try something.
Mm-hmm.
A publisher from a New York magazine saw one of my TikToks about foster care and my experiences during COVID, and then
Yeah.
that led to an interview within that publication. And
Yeah.
it was one of those things where then they emailed me, listen, I saw your TikTok. I see
Yeah.
what you're going through and struggling with the system. Can we have you on for you talking about the pain points? And that opened up to that. And if I never put that post out and I never tested TikTok as a platform, because
Yeah.
everybody thinks it's just kids
Right.
dancing and stuff like that, which there are a lot, but
I
there
love
are a
that.
lot of professionals now really
Yeah.
utilizing it and
Exactly.
figuring out creative ways to really promote themselves and push their business and themselves out to the outside world.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Yes. So funny story. For a short while, I did own an urban clothing company, and some of the populations that I was marketing to were, I had another company that was strictly for all-star cheerleaders. And so it kind of matriculated over to all-star cheerleaders and dancers when it came to the urban clothing company. And so tons of dancers and cheerleaders would reach out to me. I'd have, celebrities and dance celebrities that would, some of them from Dance Moms and stuff that would come and model my stuff. And I would do the photography in the background. I love photography on the side, not 100% the greatest, but I'm pretty darn good. So I would do my own photography, and one of the girls that we did a video shoot with here in Miami now is one of the top TikTok people, because she started on that platform much sooner than a lot of other dancers. And because of that, now she's there, and I'm just like, wow, this is amazing. Like the platform that it's given children. And I hear a lot of times, Instagram used to be for the ones who were like pretty. they knew how to take pretty pictures. They knew how to take pretty selfies and pretty food pictures and whatever they were doing. It was all about the pretty. And now TikTok really exposes the person to have to actually interact and do more than just like one snapshot in time. And so that forced them to, it really changed the way things work. And those who used to be super active on Instagram are now very quiet and just snooping on TikTok because they're not capable of doing that same type of platform. So
Yeah, it's really getting on a platform, and it attests to the fact of really testing it early. So when
mhm,
you're an early adapter, you get
yeah,
majority of the benefits. You kind of get on it before it's like the wave
yeah,
dissipates. So right
exactly.
now you can still get on and really like pop. If you get on the For You page and
Yeah,
it's basically like you going viral version
mm,
of TikTok.
yeah,
And like you said, Instagram is very pretty, very neat, very
yeah,
Photoshop, this perfect life, this
yeah,
perfect,
hmm,
um, outside lens or filter to your life where it's just
yeah,
like, okay, a few vacation pictures, just that. And I'm living this perfect life and I have a perfect relationship, where I
yeah,
think TikTok has the benefit of showing just kind of raw and real content, really
mm,
a lot of unprofessional content, like, no Photoshop, no anything, no video
yeah,
edit. And it
yeah,
really, there's a lot of awareness. So a lot of people with handicaps are influencers. A
yeah,
lot of people with different conditions and diseases, and people that have went through a lot of things,
hmm,
in terms of, networking and really communicating with other foster parents, people that were in a foster care system, really kind of having that camaraderie. I think there's a lot of that. And I think some
mm,
platforms have like a lot of bullying or people that don't stand up for themselves. And
yeah,
I think TikTok, there's a lot of people that are willing to stick up for you if something is said or something is done. I know, like two days ago, there's this viral trend. This little girl, I think, got brain cancer, and the mom put up a video of her shaving her head. It has a few million. So people duet it. There's like a feature where you can put that
mhm,
person's video next to yours and duet it, and
yeah.
react to it, or do whatever to it. And all these people were just shaving their heads in support of
Oh,
this girl, and
oh,
it just went viral. And just things
oh,
like that, like just like things that make you happy, and like
right.
reaffirm that there's still hope, like for the human race. So like
Yeah.
that's an aspect of the platform that I really enjoy.
Oh, I like hearing about that because I have teenagers and they like to send me random TikTok things and I'm just like, I'm not interested in this.
Yeah,
And they
there's a
just
lot.
watch it. Just watch it, mom. You'll like it. And sometimes I don't agree, and sometimes I do. Sometimes it's those little heartbreaking stories like that that you just go, oh, there's still good left in humanity out there, and so all right. So if I were to, I know if I snooped on your TikTok platform, I'll probably get a lot of insight on what I should be doing. But why don't you are you able to share some of your just very quick tips? Like if this is the platform you're interested in, or whether it's Facebook or any social media platform, like where, without kind of giving all your secret sauce away, what are some of the tips that you get them started?
Yeah, well, one thing, it's you got to figure out what you want to do personally, professionally, and my whole thing is not put your eggs in one basket, whatever that
Yep.
the American saying is, but really go where your audience is, or where you're looking, the people that you're looking to consume your content, where they spend their time online.
Yeah.
So if you're not looking for the business crowd, you're doing some kind of silly comedy, not like silly comedy silly, but like you're a comedian and you put
Yeah.
funny content out. LinkedIn may not be the right platform. Maybe you want a presence to test it. I wouldn't, dissuade you from testing it, but definitely TikTok, definitely Facebook, definitely Instagram. So really
Mm-hmm.
understand that, and really understand like where you can get the most
Yeah.
organic reach if you don't have the paid funds to push, paid ads on those platforms.
Right.
So Facebook, I think it's important still to start a community. So if you do anything on Facebook in terms of kind of your brand or your expertise, I would start a group and really
Yeah.
talk to people from that group, and then have them then go in terms of your email list, or take them somewhere where you're more in control of the results and aren't at like the mercy of the platform.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happened with Facebook. You had all that organic reach, 100% of your followers saw all your content, and then they basically capped your organic reach. So now, regardless of what you put out, only a certain
Mm-hmm.
percentage of your followers actually see that content. So I think it's important in that
Right.
sense. And like I said, TikTok is still out there. You should definitely test it. And it's important, like you want to
Mm-hmm.
test content, but you should really have a core pillar of content. So majority of my content
Yeah.
is focused on, foster care issues when I'm going through, tips for new foster parents, different things I'm experiencing with each individual child, something they may have done that I'm proud of. And then I started
Mhm.
working when I started pushing my podcast more and had video content, pushing my podcast out, and hashtags and relevant information like that is important
Yeah.
for TikTok. And every month or a few weeks they release new features. Now they have different kind of skins and stuff like that as like the preview screen. So really testing that and really seeing how people that have a community or following, how are
Mhm.
they using these new features, and you testing them yourself.
Yeah.
So a lot of stuff doesn't make sense why something hits or cracks. Like one of the
Correct.
episodes, actually, this one that had 8,000 views, in terms of a clip for one of my episodes on my podcast, it was a person that grew up basically. He was born out of a affair from a black father and a white mom in Detroit in the 60s, but they had an affair at work and they were married obviously to two different people. So
Mhm.
the mother
Mhm.
decided, to stay in her marriage and not keep the son and put the son up for adoption. So he was born during the 60s in the time of the riots in
Yep.
Detroit. So Detroit was still burning while he was born.
Right.
So I think it was a relevant time to now with the stuff going on in the country and kind of, political and social unrest and things of that nature. And I used really, connective hashtags to that, like equal rights, equality, things like
Mhm.
that. And people found it. And I think the power of hashtags on a platform like TikTok
Yep.
really works well. And this is what happens when a platform is new. They want as much content and as many creators as possible. So
Yeah.
then they have the eyeballs and the views, and then they can, launch their paid product and put ads because they have the following and they have all that content. So
Mhm.
the platform in terms of paid for TikTok is really starting to roll out. It's
Yeah.
still in its infancy, but you still have a really good chance of organically showing
Yep.
up and really reaching the people you're going to reach, because there's
Mhm.
no way the post that I've gotten to 105,000, and I think it's like 5,000 likes, 105,000 views, a couple hundred comments, which I've answered every single one of them on that stream.
Wow.
But I couldn't have done that on a platform like Facebook now. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the power of, like I said, getting into something and testing it before you
Yeah.
still have the chance, and then building that audience. So
Yeah.
building that audience as big as possible organically,
Uh-huh.
because maybe in a year, 6 months, you're gonna
Uh-huh.
have to pay to reach it to that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow. That's incredible. Um, so Roman, you've given lots of great feedback with parenting, foster parenting, digital marketing, podcasting. Where can Comfort Kill followers find you online?
Yeah, I have a hard last name, but if you Google Roman Prokopchuk, you'll literally see a lot of the interviews I've done all over the place. You'll get my podcast, you'll get my website. You can find me on my company site, novazoradigital.com. And like you mentioned, the podcast is the Digital Savage Experience. If you Google that, you'll find that. And I'm on every social platform. So whatever you're comfortable or what your platform of choice is, you can DM me, follow me, interact, ask me any question. I mean, I literally answer every question, not necessarily, right away, but I do get and try to follow and really connect and communicate and engage, because I think the main point of social media is engagement and having a conversation. So just seeing people like your stuff, and if you're not
Mhm.
answering and not interacting with
Yeah.
your community, you're really like leaving that component out.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, what's one of the most common reasons people who fail in their journey? And this can be, I'm pretty sure you can probably sum it up with your foster parenting, digital marketing, podcasting, like all the above still involves going down this journey. And what do you think is one of the biggest failure? I know earlier you mentioned with podcasts, people stop before they hit episode 10. So, what would be your tidbit advice for them to keep pushing through?
I would say know what your why is to begin with, and really
Mhm.
like be
Yeah.
unwavering from that. Have that, what I think your why is based on your core values and your
Yeah.
value system and who you are as a person. And once you know that, like whatever you go through, it should not, waver you in terms of who you really are and what you
Mhm.
stand for. So things that may compromise your integrity, you can get past that or see that, because you really have your core set. So really
Mhm.
knowing what your why is and then doing things for the right reason. So I
Okay.
just got into podcasting because the love of it. And then, like I said, it helped me with a loss. And now
Yeah.
3 years later, I'm getting recognition and, you
Yeah.
know, getting a little bit of money. I mean, it's not something that I can switch over full time, but it
Mhm.
pays for equipment and promotions and stuff like that. So, like I
Yeah.
said, really doing something for the right reasons. I would say, me, I'm more of a heartfelt entrepreneur. So, like leading from the heart, leaving a legacy. And if you do something like that in that kind of mindset, and you don't look for anything in return, that's
Yeah.
when things come to you. So, I mean, I do a lot of things, and then it's like one of those things that just things trickle in, and you don't even know where they're coming from because you've
Yeah.
done so much good, and you've done things for the right reasons. So, I think
Right.
also doing things for the right reason.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. My daughter just so school's just started back up, and she's taking AP psychology, and her psychology teacher asked the students, if you had a genie and you had one wish, what would that one wish be? And a lot of them were very materialistic in their wish, as teenagers are expected to be. And but she never got called on. So I did ask her. I said, "Well, what would your one wish be?" And she said, "My one wish would be to leave behind a legacy. I want for hundreds of years from now for somebody to know that I've done something to help improve this world that we're in and be known for that." And I just thought, I'm doing the right thing as a parent. She really knows what she wants to do. Her goal is to become an ED trauma doc, and her specialty area where she really wants to focus on is human trafficking and child abuse cases. And so, I'm guiding her as much as I can from a nursing perspective, but for sure, I really hope that, I have two retirement plans, and both of them are going in the right direction for me. So I'm really, really, that's really great advice. Knowing your why is really important, because a lot of times people lose focus of what their why is. And oftentimes if that's the case, then your trajectory is already changed and you've already shifted. So find something that makes you happy. At the end of the day, you don't want to be going down this road just because it's, what you're supposed to be doing. Continue finding that thing that makes you happy and stay excited, stay curious.
Yeah, and it's
So
okay to pivot, I think also, like you said,
yeah,
it's okay to pivot, but doing things for the right reasons. Because like oftentimes you want to try everything and you end up doing nothing because
right.
you don't know what you're driving or what that kind of.
Yep, yep. And so sometimes we don't know what we don't know. So Roman, what have I not asked you that you would have liked for me to go down the road with questioning?
I mean, I was going to actually, before the whole criminal justice direction, I was going to go in the Marine Corps as an officer. So
Yeah.
I was going to go to Quantico, do the training, and for the Marine Corps, if you have a bachelor's degree, you can do the training and go to OCS, and
Yep.
then get a second lieutenant commission. I actually had a ulcer that was caused by a bacteria called H. pylori for years, and it like ate
Mm.
away my stomach to the point I almost died. So before the pre-ship PFT, I was spitting out blood and stuff like that, and I couldn't do that. I
Yeah.
couldn't go to Quantico, and directions changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was one of those things where what if? But I
Right.
wanted to do that for the right reasons too. But I think if I ended up going to Quantico, I would have probably died during the training based on like what I was experiencing internally.
Exactly. Yeah. And and that's another great example and reminder of how, sometimes we think we have a certain prescribed path for us, which is, when you were doing your internship with the Secret Service and getting your security clearance through them, you already had all of this kind of lined up for you. But then life happened and something got in the way with you being able to follow what you thought at the time was your dream. But look where you are now, interviewing drug cartels from Colombia. Like you're doing amazing things, and I think a lot of times people get very defeated in what they thought their path was supposed to be, and then just getting beat down and not coming back up from it, and realizing that there's still more to life and there's still another direction they can take, whatever passion it is. We don't have just one passion. Like you said, not all eggs in one basket. Let's just touch and to feel a little bit of everything, and then kind of get to know where we want to be really at this point in life. And then as you age and mature, things change too. So very much appreciated. Well, Roman, it's been a pleasure. I do want to give your wife a shout out. So what is her name?
Lindsay.
Lindsay. So Roman and Lindsay, the story that Roman has shared on behalf of the two of you has been incredible, and I do think that you guys are doing amazing things for the children and your community. But then the things that you're doing outside of that as well, Roman, is just phenomenal. So continue doing what you're doing. I really appreciate your time and your patience and your adaptability with all of the IT issues that we've had tonight. But thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you.